All right, hello everybody. I'm back. I know it's been a while. I missed the last couple of pay-per-views. I think it was Backlash. I can't remember the other ones, but I missed them because there's so many WWE pay-per-views, and my schedule has been so tight lately that I haven't been able to sit down and actually watch the pay-per-views in order to review them. But I'm back. Have no fear. I'm not dead. In this episode, we'll be discussing NXT Takeover Brooklyn 3. And in my next video, I'll try and do SummerSlam, but SummerSlam was a pretty long show. But let's not worry about that. This episode is strictly about NXT Takeover Brooklyn. The first match on the card saw Johnny Gargano, aka Johnny Wrestling, take on Andrade Cien Almas. I believe that's how you say his full name, Andrade Cien Almas. But yeah, this match, it didn't really have any build. Johnny Gargano had just came back from injury. At the last NXT TakeOver, his tag team partner, Tommaso Ciampa, who is injured right now because of karma. Tommaso Ciampa, after they lost their tag team title match, jumped him from behind, threw him into the LED screen, then put him through a table and all that kind of stuff. So it effectively wrote him off TV for about a month. Then he came back, brand new theme song and all that stuff, came back, and I believe Andrade Cien Almas challenged him to a match, like his first actual singles takeover match since coming to NXT. And that was pretty much the build. There's no blood, there's no real hatred between the two people. They just wanted to have a competitive match. So this match, for an opening match, was very, 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 very good. And that's something that NXT does very, 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 very well. Even though their roster has been, kind of small or is lacking the star power that it once had, it always seems to put on very, very, very entertaining opening matches. And this match was exactly the same. This match it wasn't really the WWE-esque type of match. This match actually reminded me a lot of a New Japan Pro Wrestling match where there are big spots, no selling in between those big spots, and then a huge spot. Well, yeah, a huge spot. This match didn't really have a huge spot, but it pretty much followed the same formula where one guy would do a move, no sell, another guy would do a move, no sell, and then one big move that gets the crowd off their feet and cheering, and then they sell for that. But yeah, this match was pretty good. Johnny Gargano, Johnny Wrestling, or whatever you want to refer to him as, is a very good wrestler, and I see a lot of star potential in Johnny Gargano. He's one of those type of wrestlers who, throughout his career, shall remain a babyface because he's so good at playing the babyface in peril. He'll always stay over as long as he's booked to be the underdog, babyface, whatever you may have, whatever you call it. Andrade Cien Almas is very weird because initially he came into NXT as a babyface. But it was the same thing when he was in New Japan or when he was in CMLL. Initially, he was supposed to be a babyface, but it didn't work out. So they ended up turning him heel. He did it in CMLL, did it in New Japan, and now here in NXT, he was forced to do the same thing. When he debuted, he was supposed to be the brand new Mexican babyface or whatever. And he came in, he had the stupid looking suspenders, he had this stupid hat with the feather in it, and it just didn't work. But now he's reinvented himself. Over the time, he went from becoming a babyface to just a regular angry person. Then he evolved into a cocky heel who didn't really care about wrestling. He just wanted to party and all that stuff. And then he found himself a manager, someone who can talk for him. And that's something that he desperately needed. He needed someone who could talk for him, who could get across how cocky he was. And now he has someone to do that, as well as keep him off track. So he does care about his matches. He does care about winning and things like that now. So now I see big things for Andrade Cien Almas. He has a look. If he can stay healthy, he'll have a nice long career. Will he ever be NXT champion? I doubt it, especially with the way the roster is looking now. But beyond NXT and things like that, I think he'll be pretty successful, especially since WWE has been begging to find another Mexican star that they can put their championships on. So that's that. The ending of this match was very... It played to the story of DIY breaking up very, very well. Johnny Gargano was going for the one man meet me in the middle. And before he could execute the super kick, I don't know Almas' manager's name. But whatever her name is, she threw a DIY shirt at him. He got distracted. Andrade hit a huge kick, then hit that weird, funky looking hammerlock DDT thing that he uses as his finisher for whatever reason. He hits that and gets the easy 1, 2, 3 in a very good competitive match. Now, if I had to grade this match on a scale from 1 to 10, it was a solid 8. Like I said, these matches, the opening matches that NXT does, are always done very well. No matter who's in that position, they're always done very, 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 very well. So 8 out of 10. The first match on the card saw Johnny Gargano, aka Johnny Wrestling, take on Andrade Cien Almas. I believe that's how you say his full name, Andrade Cien Almas. But now this match came about after the ladder match at the last NXT Takeover. I believe it was 2 or 3 episodes after the last Takeover. The Authors of Pain were in the ring. Paul Ellering was doing the talking for them. The lights go out. Sanity appears. They start beating the crap out of the Authors of Pain. And they started beating the crap out of the Authors of Pain. And it was so compelling and so different because up until this point, the Authors of Pain have been running through everybody. And on top of that, they didn't even have Eric Young with them when all of this went down. Eric Young had been written on TV. So it was just the lesser members of Sanity, Killian Dane and Alexander Wolf, who did the beating and all that stuff. But over the weeks, the brawling and all that stuff continued. Eric Young was eventually written back on the TV. And tonight, he and Alexander Wolf actually won the tag team championships. Now, the Authors of Pain. I'm a big fan of the Authors of Pain. I understand that they're still very green, but both men in the tag team have a lot of potential if they stay together as a tag team. If you break them apart, they don't have anything. But as a tag team, they're very, very intimidating, very good unit. So as long as WWE decides to keep them as a tag team, they'll do fine. As well as the same can be said for Alexander Wolf. As long as he's in a tag team or a group like Sanity or whatever, he'll be fine. Outside of that, those 3 men will sink. As far as Killian Dane and Eric Young is proven. He's been doing this for a long time. He's been world champion elsewhere outside of WWE. And if WWE decides, or even NXT decides, we're going to put the NXT championship on Eric Young, or we're going to put the WWE championship on Eric Young, it'll be a good investment because he's been put in that spot before and he's thrived in that spot. Killian Dane is a very young, athletic, big man, and WWE loves that. And I believe over time, as he develops his character, eventually he'll have to split from Sanity in order for this to work. But when he does, and if his character is built to the point where when he wins the championship, it's rejoiced and not rejected, he'll be a great world champion or NXT champion. Now, with that being said, this match was a pretty good match too. You had the brawling, you had the table spot that just about every tag team match has now. You had the table spot. Well, specifically Authors of Pain. They always have a table spot in their match. They had the big man spots, the power spots. People were flying through and over the top rope and all that stuff. Alexander Wolf, this was actually to me kind of like his showing out party, because up until this point, yeah, he's done some kind of wrestling, but never this much wrestling. And the time where he does a whole lot of wrestling, not only is he doing some of the best stuff in the match, he actually wins the tag team championships. So for Alexander Wolf to have this kind of performance and then eventually end up winning the tag team championships in the end, all played out perfectly for him. Like I said, Eric Young, before the match even started, there was a huge brawl. It looked as if Killian Dane was gonna get up on the apron and tag himself in. Eric Young was like, "No, I'm gonna tag myself in. I'm the leader. I'm gonna be in this match, not you." And he did excellent. It's Eric Young. Like I say, he's proven. He's gonna go out there and he's gonna have a good match every time because he's good. Authors of Pain, while they're still kind of green and they're still trying to figure out who they are as a tag team, this is very good. Like over the past 4 or 5 months, every time they've been on this big stage, referring to the Authors of Pain, every time they've been on this big stage, they delivered, and they only get better and better and better with each and every match. But I will say this: this tag team title change was very, very, very surprising, and I'll talk about that later in the review. But this title change of all the title changes was the most surprising, because up until this point, I believe Authors of Pain were undefeated. Nobody's beaten them, and everybody that they've stepped in the ring with, they've dominated for the most part. So to see Sanity come out here 2-on-2 for a good portion of the match, beat them in the middle of the ring 1, 2, 3 for the tag team championships was very surprising. And when the ref counted 3 and the bell rung, my mouth was gape wide open. I thought that the Authors of Pain would be the longest reigning tag team champions in NXT history. But the Ascension still holds that record. If I had to grade this match out of 10, I would give it a 7. This match was really good. Well, not really good. Yeah, really good. It was a really good tag team match, especially with all the parties involved, where only one of the people involved in the match were an established wrestler who has a track record of having good matches. For it to be as good as it was very surprising. On top of Sanity actually winning the tag team championships was also a nice, good surprise. So I would give it a 7 out of 10. There was some stuff that happened after the match, but I will show you that towards the end of the review. The third match on the card had Aleister Black taking on Hideo Itami. Now, as I stated earlier, Johnny Gargano and Andrade Cien Almas, their match really didn't have any type of special build towards it. Andrade challenged him to a match. Johnny Gargano accepted. That was it. This match had an even smaller build than that match. Hideo Itami came out, demanded respect. Aleister Black interrupted him, kicked him in the face, and the match was made. They had one interaction a week before NXT Takeover took place. Both of these guys, as of right now, are on a very interesting spot on the roster. You have Aleister Black, who is a very fast rising superstar. He has a unique look. He has a unique look. He has a unique wrestling style. And he has a certain aura about him that makes him look or makes him seem like he's a superstar. So, of course, you would want someone who has all those factors to be a part of one of your biggest shows of the year. And then you have Hideo Itami, who at one point was NXT's biggest signing ever. But with injuries and things like that, he's severely cooled off over the past 2 or 3 years that he's been in NXT. But you don't want to not put him on the card because he's still a big deal. He's still a big deal to hardcore wrestling fans. Like, even though he's been injured for a very, very, very long time, he continues to get injured. To me, Hideo Itami is still one of the top wrestlers in the world. So you want to have both of those guys on your biggest show of the year. So why not put them against each other? You know, it makes sense. But with that, over the past few weeks, if you've been watching NXT, you've seen that Hideo Itami and Cassius Ohno had an actual rivalry building up. So why Triple H or whoever's in charge of NXT, why they decided to go with this match and not the match that had an actual story going on, building up already, it's kind of weird. But like I said before, they're two of your biggest stars. As well as Cassius Ohno, he's a big star among, hardcore wrestling fans and NXT and all that stuff. But you have Aleister Black, you have Hideo Itami. They're both unique superstars, so I can see why you had this match. On to the actual match. When this match was announced, I was very excited because, like I said, Aleister Black has a very unique wrestling style, as well as Hideo Itami. Both guys their offense is very strike heavy. So it's a lot of kicks, a lot of backhands, a lot of elbows, a lot of knee strikes and all that stuff. So going into the match, I already knew they were going to beat the crap out of each other. And as soon as the bell rang, that's exactly what they did. They ran towards each other and kicked each other in the face as hard as they could. My only gripe with this match, and it was one thing that stopped the match from being the best match on the card. One, I don't think it was long enough. I think it could have gone another 5 minutes. That's one thing. Two, there were too many rest holds. There were like 3 or 4 sections of the match where there were very, 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 very long rest holds. And I think if you would have eliminated one of those portions of the match that was mainly rest holds and they kicked the crap out of each other a little bit more, and the match was 5 minutes longer, you would have had yourself a match of the night candidate, even a match of the year. But it wasn't meant to be, I guess. The match was fine though. There was nothing wrong with the match. I just believe those factors could have vaulted that match from a pretty good match to a great match. So, if I had to grade this match out of 10, it would be a 7. So like I said, the match wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it was still really good. Like, they really kicked the crap out of each other. Aleister Black, his nose was bleeding, blood all over his face and stuff. It looked disgusting. But of course, with those two talents, you expect that. You expect these kind of matches where everybody's bleeding and there's bruises and people getting kicked and kneed in the jaw and all that stuff. So I would give it a 7 out of 10. The fourth match on the show was for the NXT Women's Championship. And it had Asuka taking on Ember Moon. Now, the story going into this match was the exact same storyline that NXT did with Neville and Sami Zayn back in 2014, I believe. Maybe it was 2015. But it was almost the exact same storyline. Ember Moon wanted to be the first person to beat Asuka and take her NXT Women's Championship. Sami Zayn wanted to be the first person to break Neville's long winning streak and take away the NXT Championship. They had their one-on-one match. Sami Zayn lost, Ember Moon lost. Okay? At the very next takeover, you have fatal four-way matches. Sami Zayn, Tyler Breeze, Adrian Neville, and Tyson Kidd all competing in a fatal four-way match for the NXT Championship. At NXT TakeOver Chicago, Ember Moon, Asuka, Nikki Cross, and Ruby Riott were supposed to compete in a fatal four-way match for the NXT Women's Championship, but Ember Moon got hurt. She dislocated her shoulder or something like that, but she got hurt right before the show, so it wasn't meant to be. But Asuka ended up retaining, as well as Neville ended up retaining. After the fatal four-way matches, Sami Zayn went on a redemption-type winning streak where he beat every single person who had beat him in the past. Ember Moon did the same, where she had to beat every single person that she had to beat every single person to prove that she was worthy enough to take on Asuka one more time. So now you have the final match between champion and challenger. The undefeated champion Asuka versus the number one contender Ember Moon. Now, back at NXT TakeOver Dallas, I believe. Yes, back at NXT TakeOver Dallas. Ember Moon and Asuka went one-on-one. And that match was not very good. I don't know if it was the language barrier between the two or them just not having the right chemistry at that time. But that match was not good at all. It was very, very, very slow, very methodical. The type of match that these two women don't wrestle at all. And when this match got announced again, I wasn't really looking forward to it. I understand that both women involved are great wrestlers, especially Asuka, who is arguably the best wrestler, not just in the women's division, but in WWE and NXT, period. As alongside Ember Moon, who is also a very talented, very, very, very talented, not just women's, but wrestler, period. Both women are very talented. But sometimes when you have two talented people, they don't gel well. For example, AJ Lee and Paige, both very, very talented women's wrestlers, but every match that they had sucked. Or another example, Shinsuke Nakamura and Samoa Joe, two very, very, very strong hitting, strong style type of wrestlers. But when they had their three matches, the first one was bad, the second one was okay, and then the steel cage match was bad too. So just because you have two very, 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 very talented people, it doesn't always gel well. And with this match, I thought the same thing was going to happen again. I thought they were going to have another bad match. But these two women went out there and they proved me wrong. And this was arguably the best match on the show. If not the opening match, this match right here. They came out with fire. There was no slow pace. The only slow thing about the match was that for a good portion, Asuka was working on Ember Moon's arm, but it all played out in the end because her arm, or Ember Moon's arm, was the thing that caused her downfall in the end. But like I said, both women came out with fire. It was a very, 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 very good match. Like I said, Asuka worked over the arm to try and weaken it for the Asuka lock, which in the end caused Ember Moon to tap out or whatever. And I I don't know. This was just a very, very, very good match. The big moment in the match, Ember Moon actually went up and hit the Eclipse, which is her top rope spinning stunner type finishing move, and nobody's kicked out of it. And when she went up and she hit it and Asuka kicked out, it was like, wow, this really put Asuka on that next level. Nobody has kicked out of her move. Not only has Asuka not been defeated over the past 500 plus days, she kicked out of a move that nobody's ever kicked out before. So this put Asuka on another realm of she cannot be touched in the NXT women's division. Now, like I said earlier, this match was very similar to Sami Zayn's journey to the NXT Championship. And in the end, Sami Zayn finally ended up conquering Neville, ending his long reign as NXT champion, and he became the NXT champion. But Ember Moon, the result wasn't the same. She lost, she didn't compete in the 4-way, and then she lost again tonight. Not only did she lose, but she tapped out in very, very, very convincing fashion, solidifying that she's not as good as Asuka. And I just think not only was the match good, a great story was told too. Now, Asuka has held the championship for, I believe, 523 days. At this point, she's the longest reigning champion in all of WWE. She's held the belt almost 2 years now. Almost 2 years. And she would have held it longer. But she ended up suffering a collarbone injury. Now, the collarbone injury will only keep her out of action for 6 to 8 weeks, I believe. Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks. Which isn't a long time, especially on NXT, where you're not on TV every single week or even every other week. Like, you can miss 6 to 8 weeks in NXT and nobody would think anything of it. But Asuka at this point has beaten everybody in the NXT women's division. So now there's nothing left for her to do. So, not saying that this injury was great or anything, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise. Because now Asuka can move to the main roster of Raw or SmackDown, most likely Raw. And NXT can have a reason to take the belt off her and put it on someone else now that she's literally beaten everybody in the women's division. And with the Mae Young Classic wrapping up or whatever, you have more women coming in to NXT and more women coming in to Raw and SmackDown and things like that. So now the women's division is more stacked and things like that. So you have the opportunity to crown a new champion. And the pickings aren't slim when you have a whole bunch of new talent coming onto your roster. But yeah, like I said, this is a really good match. Match of the night, honestly. If I had to give it a grade, I would give it a 9 out of 10. Near perfect match. Near perfect. The fifth and final match at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn was for the NXT World Championship. And it saw the glorious Bobby Roode defending his championship against the chosen one, Drew McIntyre. Now, the build to this match was the least interesting, most boring build to any NXT championship match in NXT history. Over the past month or so, you had Drew McIntyre competing in matches, and he earned his spot, and he earned the right to call himself number one contender. I don't have any problem with that. After he earned the right to call himself number one contender, for weeks and weeks and weeks, he went out in front of the NXT universe and cut the most boring, bland, babyface promos of all time. Bobby Roode, who is a great character, yes, but he isn't the best heel. He didn't help Drew because in order to be a good babyface, you have to have good heel opposition. Bobby Roode was not a good heel character to help Drew McIntyre. I don't know what I'm trying to say. The main event of the evening was for the NXT World Championship, and it saw the glorious Bobby Roode taking on the chosen one, Drew McIntyre. Now, the build to this feud, in my opinion, was the most boring, uneventful build to an NXT Championship match of all time. Over the course of a month or two, you had Drew McIntyre winning matches and earning his spot to call himself number one contender. I don't have any problem with that, earning the right to call yourself number one contender. That's perfectly fine. But the promos and the babyface We Are NXT promos for the next month and a half that he was cutting were just so boring. And the little interaction that him and Bobby Roode had, it made the main event of the biggest show for your brand so bland and so boring. Like, I understand that Drew McIntyre is a good wrestler. Like, that's undeniable. He's good. I get that. But as a babyface, he's so boring. And Bobby Roode, his character, the glorious thing, it's very good, yes, very entertaining. But Bobby Roode isn't a strong enough heel to make Drew McIntyre look like this great babyface. On top of Drew McIntyre being 6'4" and Bobby Roode is barely breaking 6 foot, the dynamic is just not there. Like, if the roles were switched and Bobby Roode was the babyface and Drew McIntyre was the heel, then I would have no problem with this match. But a babyface Drew McIntyre, he just doesn't do it for me. Is he a good wrestler? Yes. But is he also boring? Absolutely. And clearly I'm not the only one that thinks that this was the wrong move to put it on Drew right now, because when he made his entrance into Brooklyn, he got little to no reaction. If you're the babyface and you want people to look at your champion as a babyface, you want him to get cheers, obviously. If you're a heel, you want your heel to get booed. He's supposed to be the bad guy. So when the babyface is making his triumphant entrance into taking the championship from the bad guy, you want him to get a very nice, loud, positive reaction. Similar to how Johnny Gargano got a very nice, loud, positive reaction earlier in the night, it just didn't happen for Drew. And you can't have your bad guy champion getting a bigger reaction than your next big babyface challenger, because then the dynamic is thrown off. It's the same thing with Roman Reigns. Like, WWE wants us, well, they wanted us to look at him as this next big top babyface. But he would come out, he would get booed to high heaven, and then whoever was facing him would get cheered. It just throws the whole dynamic off. If you know someone isn't going to get the reaction that you're expecting, book them to where the action that they receive makes sense. you had multiple people who could have been put in this spot, who could have taken the championship off of Bobby Roode, another babyface, and then had a heel Drew McIntyre take the championship from them. Instead of having a 6'4" babyface, the tallest NXT champion of all time, basically, having a 6'4" babyface champion who in reality shouldn't be getting beat by anybody in NXT because everybody is so small. He towers everybody. For example, Aleister Black. Aleister Black could have been put in this position. Like I said earlier, he's arguably he's gonna be a star. No question about it. If he would have took the championship off of Bobby Roode, which he should have, and then Drew McIntyre would have took the championship from him, I would have had no problem with that. Or an even better example, because not everybody's going to agree with me with Aleister Black, Roderick Strong. Roderick Strong and Bobby Roode have an actual rivalry going on. There's an actual story between them. There's actual hatred between them. So you can build on that. You have Roddy be this underdog babyface, which he's been playing very, very, very well. You have him finally take the championship off of Bobby Roode. And then there's this huge celebration because this beloved superstar has finally achieved his goal, become champion. He's taking it off the bad guy Bobby Roode. But nope, you have regular boring Drew beat 2 times as hot Bobby Roode. So now NXT's in this weird place. They have this babyface champion who towers everybody, who realistically shouldn't get beat by anybody because he's 6'4", he's 250 pounds, and he's in great shape. Who's beating him? I don't know. The match itself was very boring. And that's another thing, and it's not, the match being boring isn't Drew McIntyre's fault. Because, like I've said, he's a good wrestler. But this fault right here falls on Bobby Roode. Bobby Roode, does he have a good character? Yes. When he was in TNA and he was a world champion. Did he have a good character? Absolutely. It Factor Bobby Roode was one of the best characters in wrestling at that time. But when he was It Factor Bobby Roode, he was still very, very, very boring in the ring Bobby Roode. Now, just because he's boring doesn't mean he's not a good wrestler. No, he's a technically sound good wrestler. Like he doesn't mess up, doesn't botch. Everything that he does looks smooth. He's just not, his offense just isn't as eye-catching. It doesn't match his character. So after the entrance and all that stuff is over with, you still have to sit through a Bobby Roode match. And that's what this match felt like. I wasn't excited, so it just felt like I had to sit through this match and get it over with and wait for the surprise that I was hoping for after the match. And I got it. And I'll show you this after I'll show it to you after I'm done with the review or whatever. But this match was by far the worst match on the card. For me, in my opinion. Now, this match to anybody else might have been great. But to me, this match was very boring, very predictable. It just didn't do it for me. A good guy, Drew McIntyre, I'm not a fan. Bad guy, Drew McIntyre, all for it. He's supposed to be the chosen one. He's supposed to be cocky. He's supposed to think the world revolves around him. The way he was when he first got to WWE. When he first got to WWE, he had that character. He just didn't have the in-ring to match. Now he has the in-ring to match everything that he's saying, and it'll be perfect. But he's super white meat babyface Drew McIntyre who can wrestle. And that's it. And now he took the championship from Bobby Roode. And that's that. Bobby Roode has gone up to SmackDown where hopefully he achieves some success. But NXT is in a weird spot right now because you have hotter baby faces who are better wrestlers on top of that. You have them in the back of the line while you have pretty good wrestler Drew McIntyre, who's a terrible baby face, who's going to continue to go on as a baby face because that's what Triple H sees in him. That's what NXT sees in him. So he's going to be a baby face from this moment forward. That was my only gripe about the show. This was actually a very, 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 very good show. And if I had to rate the main event out of 10, I would give it a 6. Now, it wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It was just a main event match. It was okay. There was nothing special about this match. Nothing at all. But I think maybe that was because I was looking forward to what happened after the match. But even still, the match just wasn't good. If what happened after the match never happened, was never in the stars, was never written to happen, it wouldn't make the match any worse. It wouldn't make the match any better. It was just an okay match. And it wouldn't make my excitement level for the match go up or down. It was just an okay match with a very meh result. But, as I was saying, this show was actually very, 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 very good. This was NXT TakeOver Chicago was pretty good. And this one was better than NXT TakeOver Chicago. So, yeah. This show is better than NXT TakeOver Chicago. Is it the show of the year in WWE? Probably. Yeah. Probably. But NXT is in a very good space right now. A very good space right now. Back in 2014 and 2015 and things like that, NXT had a very, 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 very stacked roster. You had Hideo Itami, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Neville, Charlotte, Sasha, Becky, Bayley, The Ascension, the Lucha Dragons, all the American Alpha. You had all those stars on one show. And every episode of NXT was must-see TV because everybody on the roster at that time was so good. And back in late 2015 through 2016, NXT has lost a lot of that talent because, those stars have gone up to the main roster and things like that. So for a while, you had, at one point, it was just Shinsuke Nakamura and Samoa Joe. Those were your two, main event talents. And that was one of the reasons why Shinsuke Nakamura's title reign and Samoa Joe's title reign was so underwhelming, because all the big stars were gone by the time they were on the top. They didn't have anybody to defend the championship against. So you had to put the belt on Shinsuke, then put it on Joe, then put it back on Shinsuke until Bobby Roode and everybody else started to come back up. And then by that time, Shinsuke was gone. So now NXT is in a great space. They have a very stacked roster. And like I said, with the Mae Young Invitational, when that wraps up, you'll have more women wrestlers. So the women will be more stacked. You still have the guys in the UK like Pete Dunne and Trent Seven and Tyler Bate and all them. You still have them. You have the 3 new additions that came on after this show. Roddy. You have Roddy. You have Drew. If he turns heel, that'll be fine. Good. You have the Authors of Pain, Sanity. Asuka's gone, but like I said, they'll get more women. They still have Ruby Riott, Ember Moon, Nikki Cross, 3 great women's wrestlers. Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, who are improving every time they go out on TV and things like that. So you have a pretty good NXT roster right now. The only thing that they're missing now is a tag team division. But they're working on that too. So I say by the end of the year, NXT will be back at the status that they once were in 2014 and 2015. But with that being said, if I had to give the show an overall grade, it would be an 8 out of 10. It's very good. Very, very, very good show. The only thing that stopped this show from being perfect was the very boring, very, very, very boring main event. And that's it. That's literally the one flaw that the show had. And that match, it wasn't terrible. It was an okay match, but that was the only blemish on NXT Takeover Brooklyn 3. The only one. Now, my next episode, I'll be covering SummerSlam. That show was so, outside of 3 matches, 3 out of the 600 matches that was on SummerSlam, that show was so bad. So bad. But for my SummerSlam review, I will not be alone. I'll be with my friend Ty, and we will run down each and every single match, all 9,000 matches from SummerSlam 2017. This has been Tone. I appreciate you all for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out.